be in a job and just say, I don't want to work for anyone else. I just want to start my own thing. I think that's one of the silliest reasons people start something.
Yeah.
And I hear it a lot, but I just don't think it makes much sense. The HR people care about certain things. They don't know what the job is. I mean, they know high level what the job is, but they don't know the ins and outs of it. So you could be the best person at modeling, and they're not going to know this. You'll have to get through them to get to the investment bankers. When you're young, maybe you don't have the same commitments, the same responsibilities. So you're able to invest more of your time. You're able to sacrifice more of your free time. And I think that's the right way to approach starting something. Of course, if you're on the older side and you have experience in something, you could be significantly more successful than someone young who's starting.
Hello everyone and welcome to a new video from Careers Talks, where I chat with professionals about their daily job responsibilities, their career paths, and how they manage to land their jobs. My new guest Fathallah completed his bachelor's in economics from the University of Bath. He then did his master's in finance at Imperial College Business School. He managed to land a private equity job after his graduation at Campbell Lutyens in London. A year in his job, Fathallah decided to take a big risk and open his own coffee house in London, Guillam Coffee House. Guillam is now thriving in London and is open in 4 different prime locations. In this video, Fathallah will walk us through his career journey and how he decided to leave a stable private equity job to open his own coffee house. I hope you'll find this video insightful. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Fathallah, if you can tell us a bit in terms of, you finished university as a graduate, you've seen what it is like in the corporate aspect in terms of like your career there, and then you went to open a coffee shop. Can you walk me through that journey briefly with a focus on that decision to say, I'm done with the finance sector, I'm done with private equity, and I want to start my own business? Before, why a coffee shop, but just that decision a bit and what happened throughout these different corporate experiences, let's say.
Of course, I think there's a very important context to a lot of these decisions. And I mean, I'm giving this caveat because a lot of people say, okay, I wanted to start my business and I wanted to do something, but it's really important to make that decision in a comprehensive way, as in not be in a job and just say, I don't want to work for anyone else. I just want to start my own thing. I think that's one of the silliest reasons people start something. And I hear it a lot, but I just don't think it makes much sense. So I, during my time at Bath, I did an economics degree with a sandwich placement. So I could work for a year for my 3rd year and then go back, finish my last year, and then decide what I wanted to do. So for that placement, I worked at Morgan Stanley in their sales and trading division. And I really enjoyed it to a large extent. It was great. It was such a good way to get exposure to what it's like to work in a company, especially a company like Morgan Stanley, huge, big institution. And so after that year, I think I sort of got a sense of what it was like to work in sales and trading, or broadly, as I was there, I met a lot of people from different teams, spoke to them, and sort of understood the different roles within sales and trading. Because saying sales and trading is like saying engineering. You know, there's so many different jobs within that area. And I knew I wanted to focus more on working directly with companies. So rather than working on their stocks or debt or derivatives, to focus more on working with the businesses. So I thought, okay, it's time to maybe consider a different area in investment banking, which is IBD, which is sort of M&A, IPOs, or other areas within that field. So I went back to Bath, finished my last year. I also wanted to get more finance knowledge because surprisingly, I didn't know that much about finance. I tried to focus my undergraduate degree on just pure economics. I avoided any finance courses. And so applied to Imperial College London. They have a business school in South Kensington campus. And the MSc finance degree there is very highly regarded. It's very technical. And in that degree, I wanted to, again, just focus on finance, nothing else, specifically on corporate finance. So I did that. I had that experience, got a summer internship in the M&A team at Nomura, which was a really interesting experience. I really enjoyed the work. I really enjoyed the type of stuff we did. But I would say, unfortunately, I was in a team that was it was not the best, let's put it that way. And so the work was really interesting. Like whenever I got free reign to do something. So there were projects, for instance, as a summer intern, you get to work on your own project. And I absolutely enjoyed this. Like I put together this 100-page deck on a specific acquisition. It was so much fun to work on it, so much fun to sort of bounce ideas off people. Really, really enjoyed it. But then the experience was overall very negative because of the team I was in. I mean, there was absolutely no support. It was sort of very aggressive, unhelpful attitudes all the time, which is surprising because that's not something I experienced anywhere else. But I sort of said, okay, it's an anomaly. This is just the team, and let me try and get a job somewhere that I like in the industry. And as anyone who probably listens to this podcast knows, it's very difficult to get these jobs. I mean, you apply to hundreds, you get a few interviews, you get 1 or 2 offers. And so at the time, I was a bit fed up with the whole application process, but I still obviously applied, and I had a couple of offers. Actually more than a couple of offers, but I had 2 offers that I was entertaining. One was with a private equity secondaries advisory firm called Campbell Lutyens. Their headquarters in Mayfair, and another boutique investment bank. And I really, really loved the way Campbell Lutyens approached the hiring process. It just didn't feel very formal. It didn't feel very let's say condescending like some other places do. It genuinely felt like they were looking for people they would enjoy having in the company who are smart enough. So they had this careers event, and you go to that. Maybe I'll also give some tips on how to get the stuff. So I remember people sort of mentioning, when you go to career events, don't just think about them as career events. They're actually recruiting events disguised as career events. So I went to the event, and I sort of started speaking to people normally, was myself, wasn't asking fake questions or being like, tell me about this deal that you worked on and why is it important, or how is it going to change the landscape? Because the people who work in the bank, I mean, the junior people know this is bullshit. Like the question you're asking me is bullshit. You're not a graduate who sat there hoping to know how the oil and gas landscape is going to change based on a deal. And also the person asking it just hasn't gone through the experience, doesn't really know. So your question is very like reporter style question. So I was just being myself and asking natural questions, of course asking some smart questions about deals they worked on, but trying to make it organic. And so after that event, it was very clear that this was a recruiting event, because certain people from the event were selected for interviews that weren't really official. It wasn't like after that event there's going to be that panel process. It was more, you go to the event, they're doing a recruiting cycle, and then I got contacted afterwards, come for interviews. So I went for the interviews. I just loved the office. I loved the environment. Really, really got along with everyone I met. And their questions just felt very genuine and honest. And they made me an offer for the following year. And I told them that I was going to join another firm until that offer starts. And so they said, look, the chances of you starting with another company, because the boutique investment bank said, we'll give you they didn't hire anyone full-time straight away on junior side. They only hired long-term internships, and then they made offers to those they liked. And they've told me that so far 100% of the people who got the internship offer converted into a full-time offer. They were great people. I really enjoyed meeting them and speaking to them. And so I told the investment bank I would start that internship. It would sort of finish a month or so before my offer was due to begin. And I was going to do that. But they said the chances of you joining a boutique investment bank, working with them for 6 months, and then taking a month off and joining us are almost impossible. So we'll give you that long-term internship and also the full-time offer. So you can start with us early and then sort of connect everything together. And we'll just treat you as a normal employee, but because of, classes like the analyst class that goes in, etc.
Yes.
It would just make sense for us to do it that way. And I said yes, absolutely. It's a great experience, and I would love to, because it was just sort of a really nice place to join.
Nice.
I worked there for about 7 or 8 months.
Yeah.
Loved it, loved the work I was doing, loved the team. Honestly, it was such a different experience to what I had before. And during that time, I got exposure to a lot of the work they were doing. And for me personally, since I was quite young, I just thought I really like businesses. And so the idea of going into finance was to try and understand how businesses make decisions, why a business decides to buy another business, why they decide to raise equity to maybe expand in a certain area. And I thought IBD would give me, or let's say investment banking would give me that exposure. But once I started the work, I realized it's very specific to investment banking.
Yes.
And it was not so much you understand the holistic company. It's sort of you understand what you need to understand to get the deal
Very
done.
transactional.
Yeah, and it makes sense, because if you're working on billion-dollar deals, you're not going to be in a position of the CEO understanding operations and also building a model and speaking to investors. Everyone has the role to play, and that's completely fine. But it sort of at the time I thought I wanted that much more exposure into how to create something, because it's always the idea people have. I have this idea for a business or that idea.
Yeah.
How do I actually start it?
Execution.
And so exactly. And so I thought, okay, maybe the best way for me to get that exposure is to just start something.
Nice.
So that's how it came about from that experience.
There's a lot to touch on there.
Yeah, sorry, I answered maybe five questions in that initial
Not at all. It was spot on, like the journey. And in that private equity job towards the end, where did you move from, yes, I love this job, to I want to quit, to I want to start? Like, how did that happen?
I think I love this job stayed with me throughout until I left.
Okay.
Honestly, it was the people who worked there. Fantastic people, super genuine, super nice, and genuine in an honest way. Like, we're there to work. We're there to get a job done. They're stressed about their families, their work, their life, as much as I am. So I didn't have unrealistic expectations when I started the job, and I had the previous Nomura experience. So the bar was really low. Yeah, so I saw how bad it can get, and I really appreciated that. A lot of them, even when I made a mistake, were like, oh, you've copied this from number incorrectly, but it was never in as bad of a way. It was never dehumanizing. So I enjoyed it throughout. Let's say 6 or 7 months in, I just understood that, okay, I'm going to be doing this for the next 2 to 3 years. This is the progression. The role was private equity secondaries advisory, which was you work on basically M&A, let's say, or not M&A, but you're selling private equity investment stakes. Okay. So let's say a fund has invested in 20 different companies. They have a $20 billion fund. They want to exit certain investments, but it's still sort of part of that fund. Or I'm an investor. Okay. I've invested into a fund. The fund is 10 years. I want to realize my returns now. And so I'm locked in for 10 years, but it's been 5 years and I've done really, really well in that fund. So you need someone to come in, and if you own, let's say, 10% of the 20 billion fund, you're selling a 2 billion stake in the fund. So you need to value the underlying assets. You need to value your investment stake at the fund relative to the net asset value and sell that on. And there is a secondary market for stakes in private equity funds. Because you could be invested in a fund and then suddenly your firm's changed strategy and you want to, go into hedge funds. But you still did really well. Or you think that fund needs or even a GP, like a general partner, a private equity firm needs a continuation fund because they've done really well in their investments that they don't want to sell after 10 years. They want to hold this for another 10 years. So they need some investors to come in, buy out the previous investors, create a new fund that would extend beyond this.
Okay.
Again, it's been a few years, so I'm sure someone in the firm will explain this way better than I have. I understood that process, and I understood what experience I'd be accumulating throughout the next few years. And I thought, okay, I want to accumulate a different experience. I want to understand how, if you and I got an idea for a business, how do we actually execute it? How do we start it? And so I thought about it a lot for a little bit, and I decided, okay, the best way for me to do this is probably to just start something and see how it goes. But I think the context I mentioned earlier in our conversation is very important. When I made that decision, I went to the firm and I said, I think I want to resign. This is what I'm interested in. I explained to them the thinking, and I said, I'm happy to stay on board for as long as you need me to make sure that I hand over everything well. I don't want to be the person who goes to a company and says, look, I'm bored, I'm leaving, or I found something better. No, you guys were really great to me, and I want to do this the best way possible. So I think I stayed beyond my notice period. And I mean, in the last few days, I was really not doing much. I was sort of sending 1 or 2 emails, but it gave the team the comfort to know, okay, if something comes up, I'm there to contextualize things. And yeah, they had replacements. They were able to take on board the workload, and things were going fine. And also a really important part of the thinking is that I knew what would happen if this business failed. So I knew that potentially I may be able to speak to the same firm again and say, can I rejoin? Like, I developed this experience, I started something, it didn't work out. I'm sure it will help you guys, and I'm happy to start from scratch. I'm not going to be saying, hire me at a senior position. Like, I personally was at peace with coming in again as a zero experience analyst joining the firm. I knew if I did this for a year or two, I'm still in the market to join any investment firm or any investment bank as a junior, and I would be happy to make that start. Financially, I had saved a little bit of money, and I knew sort of what I would do if this didn't go well, so I wouldn't struggle. And so, yeah, you have to think about the context you're in. You have to do right by the people you're working with at the moment, and you have to do right by yourself. I didn't have a family to support, so it was fine if I'll slum it for a bit. I would have been happy with it. And yeah, that's important context, I think. And the context is never, I don't want to work for someone, I want to start my own thing, because you have to work for someone. Like, I work for my employees at Guillam. Like, I'm the last person to get paid, I'm the last person to see any returns. I'm the person who, if anything goes wrong that no one can deal with, I have to deal with it. If something went on fire, it's not the responsibility of the employees, it's my responsibility. If suddenly we don't have money to pay for salaries, it's my responsibility. And that's something a lot of people don't understand. It's you work for someone all the time.
And I think also, because in your case, like a lot of entrepreneurs have investors that they work with, and they invest in their startups. So in a way, you also work for them as well. Like, they need to know how we're performing, what's the outlook, what's the, like, okay, give us an overview of operations, what's the growth plan like. So you always have someone, either whether it's the employees in your case, or the investors and the employees, or but there's always someone you kind of work for, as you mentioned.
And I think it's very important to contextualize entrepreneurship as well, because businesses differ. I mean, if you start a business, obviously we all hear about the incredible success stories, or the 10 million pound plus round raises. But if you start a business and then suddenly you raise 20 million pounds, your experience as an entrepreneur is very different to someone who's bootstrapping a business. It's almost two different worlds, because you raise 20 million pounds, you hire a CFO, you hire a CMO, you hire a COO, you hire a chief HR officer, or whatever. So you have people who have experiences in certain areas that take care of them. And so they come to you with context, issues. They tell you, this is the standard position that we would take as a normal company would take, but maybe you want to behave differently or react differently. But when you're bootstrapping a business, you're everything.
Yeah.
So you're hiring someone, you Google, how do I hire someone?
Yeah.
What are the requirements? People will say, send me a contract. You write up the contract yourself using templates online. You don't know what you should include, what you shouldn't include. So it's a very different experience.
Yes.
And so it's important to, I think, make that distinction always when thinking about businesses.
Makes sense.